Great. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Hi, Alexis. We are going to get started, and we'll have friends that join us and pop in and out. We know that we're recording the session for people who can't be here this morning. So welcome to everyone. Thank you, Barry and Matt Getting, who are here to help host this session. That is about the distance learning parent survey results that we have. And so a couple reminders. I can see everybody is already in mute. So thank you for staying there. Unless it's time to speak, if you unmute, then we know it's time to speak. Please, you can use the chat box for questions. If you're not sure where the chat box is, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, looks like a little conversation bubble. If you click on it, you can see the chat and you can see questions there. You'll have the opportunity later to put questions in there, but also some answers. It's my big hook for the morning, some answers. And I think with that, we'll get started. Matt is presenting from his screen today. So Matt, it's all yours.
Thank you, Jill. Good morning, everyone, on this beautiful Saturday morning. I'm in mission control here at St. Anne's, but hope many of you can get outside today after this good conversation. But thanks so much for joining us. Let's get going. Our goal here, as Jill said, is to have a conversation. We're going to spend 25 or 30 minutes going through some material, and then hope to have some questions and go from there and have a little fun too. So let's get started. So the survey was sent in a letter from Mr. Davis on April 14th. There have been several reminders since that time to give folks the opportunity to fill it out. Why do we send a survey? Really as a tool to help us get better. This has obviously been a transition for all of us, and our hope here was that the information that we would gather, the feedback provided by our parents, would help us refine and adapt and get better to help serve our kids better, because that's really what it's all about, is the kids, the students here at St. Anne's. We had 64 respondents. We sent the survey to 185 households. We obviously have more students than that, which reflects the fact that we have a number of families that have multiple children at St. Anne's. 35% of our households responded. Just to give you a reference point, I think in the world of surveys is considered a pretty good rate of response. Some are higher, some are lower, depending what you do to incentivize people to respond, but 35% we feel is a pretty good number. There were 13 questions on the survey, including 5 that were open-ended, and offered people the opportunity to provide as much commentary or thoughts as they wanted to. The average time spent was close to 10 minutes. We identified some clear trends, and before we begin, I just want to say that this is not going to be the PhD version of the survey analytics here. Our goal is to present information that we gathered. And again, this information is to help us move forward. It's not meant to be the end-all be-all. We're taking it for what it is. And again, I think we identified some clear trends, but I just want to be clear that this is really meant to be kind of a fun, instructive exercise, and just one tool of many to help us move forward. So that's my caveat before we begin. So the first key finding, let's just get right going. This is hard. So I know that is a profound comment, but I think what we heard from pretty much everybody who participated in this survey is that this is a hard time for all of us. I think if you are like me, like most of us, life was stressful enough pre-COVID. 19, and then we've added layers of complexity onto already a stressful life. And so I think one of the things that we heard loud and clear was that this is a hard time for our families, and we are respectful, and we hear that, and we just want you to know that came through loud and clear. So a little bit about where, who participated in the survey. Equal distribution of parents in primary school, lower school, middle school, and then those parents who have children in multiple grades. So that was a pretty good indication that this hit all of our parents in a pretty accurate way. Sorry, moving right along. So the amount of time spent, again, this is just a window into the worlds of our families. The average, about 60% of our families say that between 2 to 3 hours is the average amount of time that children are spending on schoolwork. Some a little bit more, some a little bit less, but again, I think 2 to 3 hours is what we would probably expect and think is reasonable as we think about the time spent at home. So this is where I'm going to offer you the opportunity to weigh in here. The amount of time my child seems to be spending per day on schoolwork is, again, this was a multiple choice question. The options were much too much, the right amount, too little, and much too little. Does anybody want to venture a guess as to what percent of families who responded said the right amount? Use the chat box. I'll give you a few seconds to venture a guess. If anybody gets it right on the nose, lunch on me, I promise. Jill, any guesses? %, too little. So survey says 62% of our families said that their children were spending the right amount. And I will say, I think that was an interesting finding for us. It's hard to know what the right amount is, but and again, you can see here on the graph that the next largest chunk was too little. Again, this is just a snapshot for us trying to get a sense of the quantity of work to providing our students during this time. We were pretty encouraged that over 60% said the right amount. Another multiple choice: the amount of time my child is spending on a screen. Screen time, big topic of conversation these days, for the purpose of learning per day. Much, too much, the right amount, too little, much, too little. Again, any guesses on how many parents said the right amount? Take a few seconds, throw out your guesses. I'll have a sip of coffee while we wait.
I was muted, Matt, so I couldn't answer your question. So I'll watch the chat box now. No guesses. Nope, 54%. First guess, 54%.
Survey says it was actually 68%. So again, interesting feedback that the majority of our families indicated that yes, close. Lunch is on me for that one. I'll close counts for that. So again, I think screen time is a topic of great discussion right now. Balancing the amount of screen time versus outdoor time is something that we're thinking about constantly. And again, the next biggest chunk was too much screen time. But again, just another data point for us to think about as we go forward. Just quickly, these were some good indicators for us. How responsive have we been to questions that parents have been raised? Vast majority said that we have been responsive, so that's good to know. It's kind of reaffirming for us. Making sure that our families felt attended to has been a priority, so that was a good data point. And then finally, just again, this is not meant to be self-congratulatory, but the vast majority of our families indicate that they are satisfied with how we have transitioned to distance learning. Again, not all, but we're encouraged that most of our families feel positive about the transition that we've made. And again, we don't feel satisfied where we are. We know it's a work in progress and we continue to move forward, but that was encouraging that people feel as though we've made the transition pretty well. So the next part of this is going to be these were the open-ended questions, a couple of open-ended questions. The first one was describe 3 elements that you like or appreciate about distance learning. What is working well for your children? Again, this is another opportunity to weigh in on your chat box. I'm about ready to reveal a Wordle. Hopefully many of you know, my wife told me that Wordles were so 2007. So it's a bit of a dated concept, I realize, but Wordles basically take all of the information and then based on the words that are mentioned most frequently will dictate the size of those words. So does anybody have a guess as to what the largest word that was mentioned in terms of the positive elements about distance learning at St. Anne's?
Come on, someone take a guess.
Okay, the big reveal, here it comes. Creative. It's a good one, Renee. Survey says, sorry here, I know it's killing, teachers. So again, no surprise to us here that teachers, if you look at it right here, that's the big word. There are a number of them, flexibility, communication, students, lessons, videos, Google Meet, something that we've all come to know and love. But I don't think it's any surprise that when asked to name what our families feel best about, it's their teachers. You know, Jill, I don't know if you want to weigh in on anything or elaborate, but again, I think reaffirming to us that people feel that the teachers are the most positive piece.
Right, right. Yeah, actually, I would like to add to this because, and just as an FYI, the next question will address challenges. But as far as appreciating about distance learning, I have, I made notes for myself, but I also have the results here, the commentary that people, that parents and families provided us. And there were, when I looked through them, there were 3 distinct pieces that I found that people appreciated. And they include, teachers are, of course, because we're in a school, teachers are integral to all 3 of these. One's, people appreciated the structures that we have, the schedule in the middle school, that classes, the lessons are structured, and that study halls were also structured and an opportunity for kids to connect with their teachers. So all 3 of those things have to do with teachers. They also have to do with other things. Also that we were flexible in our schedule, that the schedule that we provided, and teachers provided a lot of input to that. We did a lot of meeting. If you'll remember, after spring break, we met for a week, and a lot of dialogue in the middle school about what is going to serve children best, knowing that we might have to change if we got the feedback that it wasn't working. And we've included parent feedback and student feedback and teacher feedback, but that students had the opportunity to do their work over a 2-day period or throughout the day, and then have another check-in at the end of the day was a big plus for appreciation. And the last thing, which maybe I should have mentioned first, was the great lengths that teachers and advisors have gone to attend to the whole child, to the social emotional side of things, in addition to the intellectual learning side. And over time, and based on feedback that parents have provided and students provided, we kind of started small and grew what we were doing to meet people's needs with, you know, Friday advisories and ongoing feedback and ongoing collection of feedback. Mr. Egan and his PE and his tying of knots in middle school recess, and adding questions of the day so that kids can answer and interact. And we hadn't done it then, but it's one of the things we've added, is opening up Google Meet for students to be able to meet with each other in a safe and easy way. So I think that's all I'll add for now, Matt.
Yeah, great. So the next open-ended question was, please list up to 3 challenges that you find with distance learning. Again, we got a lot of good participation on this, some very constructive feedback. Before I do the big reveal for the Wordle, does anybody want to guess what one of the top 2 or 3 challenges that were identified that will display itself in the Wordle? I'll give you a couple seconds. This is a bit of a trick question.
And remember that suggestions were also part of this question too.
Time or schedule, motivation, social, all good ones. Google, tech, yep. Yes, yes, yes. All right, so here we go. Interesting. So there's a lot here. Interestingly enough, teachers were, I mean, again, you can see it, teachers, work, time, meetings, Google Meets, schedule, parents. There's a lot here, and all of it kind of, I think, resonates for those of us who are parents and trying to manage the distance learning from home. I'm going to let Jill elaborate a little bit on the teachers, because it's, you know, obviously it's not the teachers themselves. It's, I'll turn it over to Jill. It's really more about access and missing their teachers than the teachers themselves, obviously.
Right. Yeah. Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I want to note for sure, this is not to say that as teachers, we don't have challenges, for sure, and that even sometimes we create them. But in this question, and in looking at the commentary, I have like 3 pages here of commentary. You'll see I got highlights all over the place. You know, this question included, what suggestions do you have to improve these challenges? So if the identified challenge was, my student, there isn't getting enough face time with their teacher, the suggestion might have been, so teacher would have fallen into the challenge, but then the suggestion also would have been, I'd like more live meets with my teacher. So, and that's actually number 1. That was a pattern that I saw, was we had, and we also saw that pattern not only from parents, but also from students, about wanting to have more live opportunities with teachers. Again, in our intentional plan, we grew that in the middle school. And so many of our teachers are offering at least one during the day. Sometimes it's optional, sometimes it's mandatory. It's a fine line to walk when you know students and families are trying to manage and juggle a lot at home. So, but that's an example of one of the reasons why teacher's name would come up there. We had a few comments about challenges with related arts. Our related arts day is on Friday, and most of those lessons they're like an ongoing lesson. You could work, students can work on them from Friday to Friday. There's also a study hall then. And one of the comments we got from students, and then followed by parents, was that it would be nice to have some milestones in between. And so I know that in art, they added some midpoint checks. And then in, for like PE, Mr. Egan has added his middle school recess in between as another inside the week check there. So we've done a couple things to try to accommodate those requests for with regards to related arts. And then a third trend, and I'll just keep it at 3 because those are typically that's what I'm looking at. Not that I'm disregarding other challenges, but another big bucket was social time, the request for more social time with student-to-student social, student-to-teacher social. So I've mentioned several things that we added based on feedback from both parents and students. Let's see, there's a couple. I've mentioned middle school recess. I mentioned advisory challenges. I mentioned Google Meets, opening that up to students. We also, in one of our social studies teachers is offering fireside chats to our older students, especially around topics that are difficult to discuss. And specifically, we are going to be adding, because we know that our 8th graders, our graduates to be, are missing out on so much this spring. Not that all kids aren't missing, but the difference between 8th grade and the other grades is that our other kids are going to come back to us, and we're going to be able to regroup and redo and reassure. Our 8th graders are graduating and going somewhere else, and those schools are also aware of what they're missing, and they're attending to that and being intentional about their planning. But we have a couple things for our 8th graders that are going to be built in during the month of May to help with that social piece, because they're saying goodbye to St. Anne's in a way where they won't be here next year. So I'll leave it at that. But those were the things that I wanted you to hear from me right now. I look forward to your questions later. Okay, Matt, thank you for the time.
So, so now that was really a kind of a snapshot of the survey results. Again, I think that as Jill just alluded to, there was a lot of information, a lot of qualitative information. Most of it, frankly, was very positive, but that doesn't mean that we're resting on our laurels there. We're really trying to look at all the feedback we got individually and think about how to help us to move forward. So the last part of the presentation, if you will, is I think Jill will just relay kind of some of the key findings, and then I'm going to turn it over to Barry, who's going to talk a little bit about what this all means as we move forward, not just for the remainder of this year, but as we look to next year. So, Jill, I don't know if you want to take it away, the kind of the high-level key findings.
Sure, and I won't repeat myself because we've been listening here about so many things, but you'll recognize these. A key finding was we need to look at increasing the number of opportunities for social interaction. I've just reviewed those for you before, and we were looking at student to teacher and student to student. And then the second bullet there is add synchronous time with teachers. Those were we added live meets. We've added optional meets for students to meet with teachers. We intentionally had a slow growing of that because if you think back, when we first started this, when you introduce something new with anyone, you don't want to, if I have 20 new things to introduce, I don't want to introduce all 20 at the same time because the results of that could be less than ideal. And so we came back to school doing a review for 2 weeks, but introduced lots of new digital tools and new formatting of lessons and new ways of having to communicate in a distance learning setting. And then we moved into, once they were a bit comfortable with that, and they being the students, we moved into new material, and just expanded on the things that we were doing and increased all those opportunities. Your feedback was essential and incredibly valuable to us in doing that, as is the feedback that we got from your students. And then finally, that there were lots of comments on the positive side. I want to go back to what Matt said about this. Sometimes my family says, Mom, why do you always have to focus on the bad? Like in my house, not in school. Why do you always have to point out what we could be doing better? Like, I'm my mother's daughter, and that's just kind of how I think. But I would also say that in a continuous improvement mindset, that is what you're looking at. It doesn't mean that we're disregarding all the really good things that are going on, because there are so many good things going on. Our challenges slide was one slide. There was a lot of other positive things. Our teachers and students are doing amazing things. But one of the things that came from this for continuous communication wasn't that we were doing communication poorly. It was actually that we're doing it well. But I want you to know that I don't look at that and say, we just need to keep it all the same. It tells me that we need to make sure that we are continuing to adjust and modify our communication with the changing landscape of the circumstances. So as we get closer to the end of the school, it might look a little bit different. We're certainly not going to let off of what we're doing. That's one of the reasons why we're going to continue to have conferences for middle school. You'll see in my letter that comes Tuesday, we're going to have a 2-week open period so that we can be flexible with making our advisors making times to have conferences with you and your student. They'll look a bit different than our normal student-led conferences because they just will. The circumstances are different, but kids will still be talking about what they've learned about themselves, what their goals are for going forward, them recognizing their achievement. All of that goes into them becoming more self-aware and being able to self-regulate, which is all part of being in middle school and building, sharpening and honing the skills they need for high school. So we'll continue. So that's what I have until we have questions. So thanks for listening. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jill. And then finally, and I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Davis here for this final slide. So Barry, you want to take it away?
Sure. So do we see this moment as an interruption of status quo or as the start of a paradigm shift? And I love this question for a few reasons. One, I've been reading a lot of information, and any time that there's been any major incident throughout history, there's always learning that takes place from it. There's always growth that takes place from it, and this is no different. There are a lot of things that we are continuing to learn, and there's a lot of growth that is taking place. So when we think about this question and we look at, whether or not it's status quo, well, I think status quo is something that is a moment in time, and so I don't see how we can have the experience that we've just had without being able to grow from it. And going to the first bullet, St. Anne's is going to be St. Anne's. One thing that I think is really telling for us is that our core values and our expectations remain the same. When we talk about our growth, when we talk about our potential for good in local and world communities, all of those things remain the same. If nothing else, it shines a brighter light on it to say that, what, our mission is sound. Our core values, respect, responsibility, compassion, those things are sound and are needed now more than ever. So that does not change. When we look at, safety, hygiene as a new core value, we're already in the process of establishing a safety task force. I've been in touch with a number of medical professionals to talk about what are the things that we want to make sure that we're doing when we return to school. How do we keep our children safe? How do we keep our environment safe? And so we're already, very much involved in preparing. And so there's information that will be shared with you moving forward. So that's something that you'll be able to look out for. Online learning being here to stay. I think these Saturday morning virtual coffees are a perfect example of something I think is a great advancement for us. We could have always done online virtual coffees. There was not an incentive or there wasn't an impetus to do it. Now we know that this is a great way for us to be able to communicate with a lot more folks, a lot more of our parent community. And so I would say that this is something that will continue, whether it takes place, what the time frame is, whether it's monthly or however we do it, I can't say, but I can guarantee you it's something that we will continue to look for and look to use. For our faculty and things that are going on with our students, there are many lessons that are being learned that we can find that can combine with what we were doing in the past to make us a better school, and just to kind of raise our academic game to another level as well. Inherent stronger than ever. I think throughout this entire process, while as Jill mentioned, there are things that are that we wouldn't choose to go through, but they are things that have made us stronger. One thing is that, I've learned that this community comes together when things get challenging. And I mentioned in the very beginning of the year, you can only tell the strength of your partnership when something is going wrong. Everybody's a great partner when it's 75 degrees and sunny with a nice cool breeze. But when things get challenging, that's when you find out who are the people that are really there with you, who are the people that are really there for you. And that's the type of community this is. The information that you've shared with us on the survey about things that we might want to tweak and do a little bit better, we take those things very seriously. We're not sitting back to say, well, we're so great. We're saying we are working toward being great. We're working toward being as good as we can be. And so your partnership and your input and your suggestions are very helpful to us. So with that, I'll stop rambling. I'll get off the soapbox and thank you for a minute to share some of these thoughts with you.
Thank you, Barry. And yeah, with that kind of concludes our official presentation of the survey results. Obviously, happy to answer any questions about the survey, and then those of us here who work at the school can answer any other questions too. So.
Right, so you can either write your questions or comments in the chat box. And if you'd rather speak your question, you can, I think it might be better if you just, we don't have a raise your hand function on here, but in the chat box, if you just say, I'd like to speak, then we can go there and no one will talk over each other. So we'd love to answer your questions. It doesn't have to be about the survey either, but we'd love to answer your questions. Yeah, so this is how meetings go. I just wrote a note to a parent this morning that said, whoever said silence is golden has never had to like deal in the distance learning online setting. Teachers all know about wait time. It's like that time that you ask a question of a student or the group, and you have to wait, and you have to wait, and I find that difficult. My mind goes a mile a minute, but. And I'm not going to force anyone into questions either. Oh, excellent. Okay. So have a question about, okay. If someone could give me a call, I need to know info for next year. Okay, Judy, I'll give you a call and we'll get that straightened out, whatever that is, and we'll get it. Maybe, hopefully I can answer it. And if not, I'll get it to someone else. Thank you for that. All right. Well, I'm thinking that we've provided some good information. Don't forget that this session has been recorded. So if you want to go back and then take a look at it, if you have questions afterwards, we certainly can answer them. You can direct them to me, to Barry, to Matt. And if you're not sure, contact me and I'll get you to the right person. Matt or Barry, do you have any final thoughts?
No, I again, thanks for coming out on a Saturday morning, beautiful Saturday morning, to learn about what's going on. And again, just to reiterate what Jill said, if there are any further questions about the survey or what have you, obviously reach out.
I also wanted to say that there will be additional information that will be coming to you that I think will give you some more ideas about what we're looking, what the future is looking like in terms of the fall. So, you know, that should be coming to you soon.
All right. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop recording and we're done for the day. I'll put in a plug for next week. Next week is our focus is on diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's an open information session. We have some good things to share with you, and then we're hoping to have good discussion. So have a great day, everybody.